Hello and welcome to the Scottish Rugby Round Up with Cairngorm Coffee. I have just been sent a text saying I'm enjoying the podcast. You should get your dad on as a guest, but he is old enough to be my dad. He's sat next to me, Mr. Harris Grant.
Okay, that was a good one. Enjoyed that.
So, bit of horse.
Bit of horse, yeah.
You were at Twickenham. How was it?
Yeah. How good is it that we decided to launch this and then that happens? It's like, and it made us look like experts. But yes, at Twickenham over the weekend. Still just slightly tired today. I'll use the word tired. But yeah, huge weekend. Obviously a wee bit hoarse as well. We predicted it, so I'm not going to say I'm surprised, but it couldn't have really worked out better.
101.
Absolutely fantastic game of rugby as well. And I think we will very briefly touch on that as well, because I think there's been some negative press-ish around it. But I think England can also be very happy with the way they played, and generally it was a superb game of rugby. So quality I don't think was massively high. I think there was a lot of kicking, a lot of not errors, but there was quite a few errors. But technically the defenses were all right as well. There was mistakes made, but I think it was a fantastic game of rugby. Maybe not the highest quality game of rugby, but it was fantastic.
Do you think in terms of the Scottish performance it felt quite like it was highlighting individual skills? I don't feel like the tries, obviously the tries from like Aduhan in his first try, there wasn't a lot of maybe tactical, there wasn't any set piece really that lined anything like that up. It was literally opportunistic, I would say.
I think, yes. So again, from an England point of view, I think the 4 tries that Scotland scored very much kind of were not out of nothing. Chaos-ish, but then I think if you watched Ian McGeechan after the game, that chaos is created by the way that Scotland were playing. So I, at the time watching it live, didn't think Finn Russell was having that good a game. And then when I watched it back again yesterday,
and you cheated and got other people's opinion, like Ian McGeechan, and
well,
took notes.
But you start to notice the way Scotland were playing. The long passes that Finn Russell was putting in, the width they were putting on the ball, created space. And I think that led, especially, the first try, Hugh Jones goes through an absolute enormous gap in the middle of the pitch.
Yep.
Again, I think England as well will get a lot better. I think having Kevin Sinfield, and Steve Borthwick in longer, especially Kevin Sinfield from a defensive point of view, I think they will get better. But yeah, huge gaps. But that was partly to do with Scotland, I think played really well. And from thinking Finn had maybe not played that well, he controlled the game. We chatted about it in the stadium at the time. Scotland were relatively well controlled. And, so we use the words chaos, but it seemed pretty controlled.
Something interesting that Townsend was speaking about in the kind of build-up was he has got it wrong on a managing front in the past because he's been, taking too much from the occasion and try to really, energize the players by going down the whole the rivalry and all these kind of things. And actually he was talking about, when they have had success in the past, it's been about harnessing the kind of the energy, I almost said the hatred, harnessing the the kind of the moment and the passion and trying to deliver something that is refined and trying to make sure they're all switched on to not be taken in by the occasion. And it felt like that watching them, there wasn't quite as much of this reckless passion which resulted in stupid penalties or yellow cards that were just were avoidable. It was they all looked like they were really well drilled. They all looked like they knew what their kind of job was, and you couldn't really see many of them or any of them had a bad game as well, which it was such a professional overall performance.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we can touch on some of the top performers, but I would come back to it wasn't a case that England played badly. And I think, again, Scotland can be done a disservice from that. Always pundits will kind of be like, oh, England maybe had an off day. I think England were quite good. Marcus Smith and Owen Farrell, again, people have been saying, oh, they were absolutely terrible. Scotland's defence was really, really good, and it got ripped apart quite a few times.
Yeah.
But I come back to, we defended very, very well, I think Duhan actually makes a couple of errors probably for two of the tries.
I was going to say in the first half, certainly before his first try, I was not happy with him because I felt like there were really, really poor defensive positioning errors.
Yeah,
which it sometimes felt like he was just being drawn in far too much, and he maybe it goes back to he was just taken in by the moment too much. The classic, the age old like chasing the ball and stuff. Like know where you're meant to be, like anticipate where the ball is going to end up. Don't just follow the ball constantly.
Again, I think England actually manipulated some of their tries well as well. So and then Marcus Smith's execution, obviously Max Malins as well. That's going to kind of be lost in this. Given Duhan's absolute wonder try, Max Malins' put down of that ball was absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, unbelievable.
Like, and I think that will be lost to a certain extent by Duhan's try. But yeah, I think England play very, very well, but Scotland play better. I think we can get on. So some of the top performers, I think everyone did have quite a good game. I thought unsung to a certain extent. George Turner, I don't know on comms, but George Turner was absolutely fantastic, I would say, both defensively and carrying the ball and his line out.
So the combination of George Turner and Richie Gray, it finally feels like we can go into lineouts now with confidence. It's not like it was almost like it was a waste of time kicking a penalty in for touch because you're probably going to get turned over. Like in past seasons, it felt like we were then now getting to a point of kicking into their 22, going in with determination that there was no chance Richie wasn't getting his mitts on the ball as an option. And George, Turner's darts were absolutely bang on. And, to have that, and to be fair, Fraser Brown as well, coming off the bench, like, to have that now, we would have maybe won a World Cup if we'd had that 4 years ago.
We got to a semi-final. Maybe. I completely agree. And I think that is part of it. Again, we talked last week on, this segment that Scotland do have depth. My probably only concern going into the weekend's game was the lack of depth maybe in front row. And you chatted before we got on this that the subs that came on, again, Blair Kinghorn, they were absolutely fantastic. For that last 20-odd minutes, Scotland's shape was good. Again, we had to score a try. We didn't have to score a try to win the game, but we scored a try to win the game. Mm-hmm. And we manipulated that try very, very well. Another amazing finish by Duhan. But obviously in the lead up to that, you had
absolutely no right to score.
No, but
neither of those. But
great pass from Fraser Brown to Richie Gray. Great hands from Richie Gray. Then to Matt Fagerson, and then you've got Matt Fagerson obviously gives it as quick as possible to Duhan. Matt Fagerson literally takes one step, and I was like, nah, just get it to Duhan.
Yeah, at that point you think it's not too early. It was the right thing to do, but there was a lot of room.
There was still so much work to do. So much work to do. But so, what a game! Incredible for Scotland to win it.
The issue, I guess, is that, and going back to the fact, like they were trying to, Townsend had implied they were trying to harness that energy to not be, focusing on their game and not getting too carried away. However, the likes of the Duhan try and to be able to get that extra few yards to get that final try, it is these kind of games which the energy is so high in a sold-out Twickenham with such good Scottish support that it does give you that added edge. Yeah. And the question is always, when you go into an Italy or, is there a banana skin? When there's not that kind of raw, like the occasion has not been, and obviously it's not just because it's England, but it's the first game of the tournament. They've had all the build-up for that game. And obviously if we just cannot let the wind be taken out of the sails.
So I think, again, I'm referencing someone else, Jim Hamilton, post-game, mentioned that very well, pitch side. He was like, they're not celebrating like they've won the World Cup here. They're just celebrating like they've won any other game. And hopefully that mentality that this wasn't the World Cup final, this was just the first game of 5 games, will be brought into this weekend. So I think let's get on to this weekend.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because
who's giving us tickets? Oh, you've got tickets.
I've got tickets. You've been so guilty in the past. Scotland's so guilty in the past of doing well and then not doing well. Being very inconsistent. I read a stat today. We've not won our first 2 games of the Six Nations since 1996.
Was it not? It was 1995 that it became the Six Nations, wasn't it?
No, 2000. So we've not won the first two games. I think that's a stat. I'll probably have to check that, but absolutely ridiculous. So I've got tickets. Robbie doesn't have tickets. Anyone wants to give him a ticket?
I'll bring the banter.
Yeah, absolutely will not.
The friendly banter.
You can tell from this as well. He's not got any techers or insight whatsoever. So, right, yeah. What do you think? What's happening this weekend?
So
one quick point: Luke Crosby, probably the only player maybe who he had a good game, but I'm not sure was he good enough that Hamish Watson won't come in at 7 this weekend.
I think he was. I think it's funny. Sometimes, the 6 and the 7 and the 8 can do a lot and not necessarily be seen as the most impressive. They obviously do a huge amount of carrying, but then a prop like Ellis Gench apparently did 17 carries or something, does a few carries and everyone's like, oh. But like, I think there's a huge amount of work that's done without us necessarily picking up on it. Yeah, there was maybe not like a lot of like jackling going on. I noticed in the first half, I don't think we'd really contested any rucks. It was almost like they were trying to not infringe as much. So as
defensively,
possible.
And we didn't give away many penalties at all. So I think defensively, it's definitely part of what they're trying to do is not put that many people into rucks.
So maybe it didn't really give him a platform to really show what he can do. Yeah. I still think he had a great game. I don't think there was anything that he did wrong.
I think obviously when you think back to him recently, he's been an absolute like ball carrying machine, and maybe that's probably where I'm coming from. I was maybe expecting, when you think of Hamish Watson 2-3 years ago in the Six Nations, like you barely tackle the guy.
Yeah.
But so any outs? Would you change the team then going into this weekend against Wales? Would you change anything?
I think it's injuries permitting. I don't think you can. Like I don't think. You might argue Crosby. I think, I don't think Watson has shown us necessarily anything recently that warrants selection over. The only reason you would then put him in is if you thought Crosby had a bad game. But even though it was a bit quiet, I think he did everything right. So
You've convinced me. I'm like, let's keep it the same. Because I was thinking, again, one slight, if we had lost that game, the Stuart Hogg sort of bad pass to Steyn when after the break had been made goes to Hoggy, then should go back to Steyn, and it's a bad pass. Two Tapota's outside Steyn. We should be finishing that try potentially. When we're sitting in the stadium there, we're like, that's it.
Yeah, and I don't think we could get away from the fact there were some little bits and pieces, but I'm seeing this from all teams at the moment. Yeah, running from the dead ball zone.
Yeah, a lot.
Like just. Let's just simmer down a bit. So it happened for us early on, and I was like, Russell, just kick the ball. So we don't need this. Don't need to have these many heart pounds.
But then, obviously, the flip side of that was that England were kicking a lot at the start of the game, and obviously we responded. There was quite a lot of kicking in that first 20 minutes.
But like one of those things goes wrong, we give away 7 points. Yeah, you're literally the most hated man in Edinburgh /
or London.
Killatutri, is that a place? Tillicutri.
Killatutri. So the only thing I would say is, obviously, Blair Cairngorm was very good when he came on.
Yeah.
And again, a player we talked about a lot last week. You said he's a world class, potentially 23. I'm like, maybe Robbie was right, but which would be incredibly surprising. But could he
transition to Hogg's position?
Well, did he do enough to start? But again, I don't really care if he starts or not. I just think it's great that we've got that depth on the bench.
So my view on that is that, again, you don't see the whole environment that those players on the field create. Yeah. And I think someone like Hogg, to be playing that game last weekend, or the weekend just passed, and to have a Grant Gilchrist on there who is captain the side, to have a Luke Crosby there. Did he not end up being captain of the summer tour when Jamie Ritchie couldn't go or something?
I don't know.
He's been a captain of some regard,
I get what you're saying.
whether it's under 20s, whether it's for Edinburgh.
There's a lot of leaders.
But then you've got Hogg as well. I'm like, that has put us in a position where there's a lot of leaders in that field. Then to have the likes of Brown coming in off the bench, it's
Chris Harris as well.
Got Lyons on the bench.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable, and I think we're in a great position, not just skill set wise or form wise, but in these crucial moments, which is going to come down to in the Six Nations, like good head on on their shoulders to be able to kind of control the situation.
Yeah.
And then the likes of a Russell, his performance has matured so much. So I think I'm super pumped. In terms of changing anything, I think just keep it the same for Wales. I think even the bench was absolutely banging. I don't. We talked about maybe there's some weakness on the props on the bench, but I think that's just through injury. We don't have many options.
It is. I think Xander Ferguson probably will come back in. Obviously, WP now is 37 in April. We were chatting about this last week.
So good.
He did put in a big shift. The scrum creaked a little bit towards the middle to end of the second half. So again, I think not huge issues. I think Xander Ferguson is he's a Lion as well, so you'd assume he will come back into the squad potentially.
Yeah. Right, let's do score predictions.
I'll go first this time because he absolutely. You stole the best score last time. So I think again a Scotland win. I think a bonus point as well. So I'm going to say 32 to 15.
I was genuinely going to say 31. And now it looks like...
We'll do it then.
Because I was thinking 4 converted tries and a pen.
So when we score 52, that'll be closer.
Well, let's talk
Could we put 50 in Wales? Maybe.
31-20. I think it might be a little bit closer than you've predicted.
I hate again, I just do not want... If Wales were pretty poor at the weekend, so I just I don't want to see a response. I think that happened last time, that we played them... they got beaten in their first game. We played them second.
But I thought about this, and I'm like, England would have been doing the same thing. Like they had a lot to prove.
Yeah, they did.
But it was down to our professionalism and we handled that situation so well.
But we need
so now we have to do it again.
Have to handle it this weekend.
We can't let a Welsh team come in with a lot to prove and unpick our chances at a Six Nations at once. For God's sake.
I know exactly. So what we're saying probably is a lot of this hinges on Scotland's ability to control the game, and we think if we can control the game, we will win the game.
Got the upper hand. It's at home. Yeah,
I agree. I think Murrayfield will be absolutely buzzing. Last question I've got on this: is the Grand Slam on? It is, obviously, because we haven't lost a game yet. But could Scotland win a Grand Slam?
We do have a coffee coming out. It'll be out when this is potentially called Grand Slam Blend DM. So I would think that answers your question pretty well.
Yeah. So it only takes one loss for that to go in the bin. But
every time we lose, I'll take 5% off.
It'll be worthless if we lose.
And then we'll give them all away at the end.
Well, I think that's been good. I cannot believe, again, such a good weekend, such a good week to kind of come in. It completely lifts you, doesn't it? Makes you look forward to...
I don't want the fallow week to come.
No, exactly. And again, I think Wales is probably quite a good team. It sounds bad again. Imagine having Ireland this weekend. I think we'd be good to take that momentum into Ireland, but Ireland, they looked really sharp.
Is our last team against our last games against Italy?
Yes.
Can you imagine going into that game and
classic
losing?
Again? This is the Six Nations. The Six Nations are like, we'll just put the wooden spoon decider at the end, and now we need the Grand Slime decider at the end. Grand Slime. Did I say slime or slime?
They've ruined it all. Yeah,
they have ruined it all.
We should, yeah. There you go.
Do you know what I was thinking? Next time, go down to Twickers, bring some wooden spoons. I agree with that. We'd just be handing out wooden spoons post game.
And we'll take the podcast with us.
Cairngorm wooden spoons. Because you should have seen some raging lads post game.
We should rent a bar afterwards and just be like, Cairngorm Coffee Scottish Rugby Round Up.
Yeah, we should.
To like 3 people.
Call it the wooden spoon.
Anyway, I've got to go.
Yeah, he does have to go. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching.
See you next week.
See you next weekend when we celebrate another Scottish win.
Whoa.